Captain America 3 Civil War is the best Marvel Cinematic Universe movie to date. And here's why. Number 1. It does not feel like a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. I always felt like one of the biggest problems with the MCU movies up to this point was that they felt exactly like comic book movies. Sure, they had great heroes like Captain America or Iron Man and were a blend of fan service and traditional action films, but the plots were oftentimes a little thin and the villains were forgettable and undeveloped, largely using one-liners during their final battles. Looking back to Thunderbolt Ross, Malik, Darren Cross, and Obadiah Stane, the bane of the MCU's existence seemed to be that Marvel didn't know how to handle their villains or build them into something special. Maybe this was based on the idea of simply having someone there for the heroes to fight. But whatever the reason, I can't sit back and say that the previous MCU movies had villains that could stand as someone identifiable or even intriguing on a basic level. With Civil War, it's not that way. While the movie does focus on a rift between the Avengers and the formation of Captain America's Secret Avengers, this is really just one piece of a larger puzzle. The Sokovia Accords, Bucky Barnes, and Black Panther all stand as consequences of the Ultron battle in Avengers 2. But the introduction of Spider-Man and the Easter eggs of future Marvel heroes in the cinematic universe are a result of the Avengers formation, along with the world becoming aware of superpowered beings like the Hulk, Thor, Steve Rogers, and Scarlet Witch. Indeed, while Civil War did leave me walking away with a kind of finality in terms of the Avengers team, it also rings to the words of Nick Fury in the post-credit scene of Iron Man 1 when he informed Stark that he was part of a much bigger world. He just didn't know it yet. Considering that this film is the official start of Phase 3 in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, much like Tony in those final moments, I walked out of the theater with the feeling that everything was about to change. Number 2. Black Panther and Spider-Man. When Marvel announced that T'Challa would be joining the cast of Civil War as well as the post-Sony deal announcement of Peter's inclusion, I was a little concerned that their introductions would be ad hoc and that they would literally just feel like tacked-on characters for the sole purpose of advertising things to come in Phase 3. Instead, their participation in the movie felt 100% organic. Tom Holland played Spider-Man beautifully and came across as the young Peter Parker we would expect to see if his character had originally been owned and produced in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. At the same time, Chadwick Boseman played Black Panther in an incredible way. While not as intense or hardened as T'Challa from the comics, he was impressive nonetheless and was a great blend between the Black Panther we know from the Marvel Universe and the more realistic depiction of his character in the MCU. In addition to this, his involvement did not overshadow the overarching story of Civil War or the events contained within. He had a purpose, and he acted on that purpose, but his character also fought when he needed to and didn't fight when he didn't need to. While the accents were a little off, that complaint is hardly even worth mentioning in the face of how well his character was portrayed. Number 3. AntMan. So let's get this out of the way right now. I loved AntMan. I know some people thought it was lackluster in comparison to what we had seen so far and felt like the quality was on par with Iron Man 1 instead of the Winter Soldier. However, I thought Paul Rudd played an amazing Scott Lang and did a fantastic job of portraying a father stuck in a hard situation. That said, I wasn't really skeptical so much as curious as to how his character would be included in the overarching Civil War story. Without offering any spoilers, I think I can get away with saying that Scott's involvement is on the same level as Spider-Man, but he absolutely elevated the airport battle scene from something interesting to something extraordinary. The humor he displayed in the Ant-Man movie remains, but there's also a little fan service with the "oh my god, you're Captain America" moments. In truth, I think Scott Lang could have used a little more time in the movie, especially after the events of the airport battle. But this is really just personal preference and did not take away from the movie in my eyes as a whole in any form or fashion. Number 4. It's Captain America's movie. So after seeing Age of Ultron, I think Marvel moviegoers were left with a bit of a bad taste in their mouths regarding what happens when multiple heroes are thrown into a single movie with a ton of plot threads. Whether this was a byproduct of the difference between the directing styles of Joss Whedon and the Russo brothers or their ability to craft a story is a question that I don't have the answer to. But I will say that those concerns will be thrown out the window with this movie. While the failing of Age of Ultron came with the fact that there was just too much going on and the film did not know what it wanted to be, Civil War is clear on what it is: a Captain America film. While the entire cast of Avengers plus a few others are all in this movie, the main light is shined on Rogers, with everyone else being ancillary characters. Now, while I don't mean that they are unimportant, what I do mean is that their roles in the film serve to support Rogers' stance on why he's right or wrong. Indeed, the debate in Avengers Mansion between the team on whether or not the Sokovia Accord should be signed or ignored spends much of its time focusing on Rogers' reactions to people's stance and actually seems more like a roundtable discussion, leaving us as a viewer to ask, what do you do when you have to make the choice of valuing freedom versus security? Furthermore, the involvement of Bucky Barnes and Peggy Carter highlight the very idea that despite having surrounded himself by modern-day individuals whom he's come to view as friends and allies, in a lot of ways, Rogers cannot let go of the past and looks to Peggy and Bucky as the only people he can ever truly trust. Where this does evolve over the course of the film and he seems to be catching up with the modern day, overall, the Russos maintain the idea that for better or worse, Rogers is still a man stuck in the past, using his experiences with the Nazis to recognize that humans are capable of incredible and terrible things, but these ideas are a byproduct of freedom, a principle which he argues should never be compromised on regardless of how its implementation may affect the rest of the world. Number 5. Tony Stark. So yes, this is clearly a Captain America film and was written to center on Steve Rogers' view of the world. But damn it if Robert Downey Jr. is amazing. Where previous movies have seen Rogers and Stark butting heads on different issues, I feel like Robert Downey Jr. had sat down, read every single issue of Civil War, absorbed that information, and translated it into his portrayal of Iron Man in this movie. To sidetrack here, the beauty of Tony Stark's predicament in the comics was the struggle he faced between recognizing that Civil War was a no-win situation. As one of the smartest men in the world alongside Reed Richards and Black Panther, on the whole, T'Challa remained uninvolved in the comics, threatening war against S.H.I.E.L.D. should they try to impose regulation on Wakanda, while Reeds kept his head in the ground of science, designing Prison 42 to house both heroes and villains who refused to register. For Stark, on the other hand, his turmoil came in the realization that without some form of oversight, the events of Days of Future Past or some similar future were guaranteed to come to fruition, and that society would eventually turn against heroes due to slowly coming to the belief that their desire to defeat villains overrode the concern for civilians. Looking to keep this from happening, Stark operated as the figurehead of regulation and the eventual director of S.H.I.E.L.D., all while realizing that Civil War had created a rift in the Marvel Universe that could never be completely repaired. Much like those comics, the Civil War movie throws Tony in opposition to Rogers, asking the question of what use is freedom to a society that would use that freedom to destroy itself. As a result, Stark's position of realizing that there's no way to win this war per se goes forward unabashed under the idea that heroes needing to operate with oversight was a necessity. While both Stark's strict adherence to registration and Rogers' strict adherence to freedom both have their own drawbacks, the Russos did an incredible job of presenting those dichotomies in a way that resulted in some incredible arguments between the two and creating a fracture in their friendship that would change the way each views the other forever. So having said all of that, can the Civil War movie be compared adequately to the Civil War comic? Well, the answer to that question is that it cannot, simply because the Civil War event spanned over the course of a year, ran along over 100 comics, and involved the entire roster of Marvel's heroes minus mutants. However, for the movie being what it is, and the Avengers roster and Marvel's lineup being as limited as it is, Civil War was a fantastic movie and really threw the idea into question regarding the American people and how we in the real world view ourselves in relation to the argument of freedom versus security. With that being said, we're going to bring this review to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and post your thoughts down in the comment section. Did you guys love Civil War or did you guys hate Civil War? And I will catch you guys later. Peace.